Welcome to Book to Where two guys, original booked guys, tell you about the books they're reading. I'm Rob Olson.
And I'm Livia Snedden. Rob, I've got to tell you, the response to Frank being on the podcast has been kind of strong.
Has it? Because I haven't really seen anything.
I was a big fan of it.
Oh, that's the response.
It's a fair response, right? So,
So,
how you doing, buddy? It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been a couple weeks. I'm good. I'm relaxed. I'm rested. Had some fun down in Texas. I don't know what we want to. I don't know how far you want to go into this.
I mean, that's entirely up to you. It was your trip. I'm just I'm glad that I got to chat with Misty and Jesse while you were down there. That's always nice.
Yeah, totally.
Is there a specific highlight that you want to like? Is there anything that like really stood out on this trip?
So like I don't know, because your trips lately have been like you and your girlfriend. You haven't gone on like a group of friends trip in a while. Am I right about that?
Yes, that is correct.
All right. So the good and bad thing about the group of friends type of trip or the conference type of trip is that like you got a bunch of people together, it's exciting and everybody wants to go do stuff. But it's also the bad thing because it's like you're nonstop having to figure out like what are we going to do next? Where are we going to go to eat? And like trying to like accommodate for everybody's, little idiosyncratic needs.
Are you trying to tell me there were a bunch of bitches while you were down there?
No, the exact opposite. So like
you were a bitch. I can't believe that too.
We were just so chill about shit. Like it was the first trip like this I've ever done where like we is getting close to planning for what we're going to eat for dinner, and we were just like, why don't we just DoorDash something? So we DoorDashed like several nights instead of going out and doing something fancy. We just kind of hung out and had food brought in.
That's cool.
So it was very relaxing, very laid back. We didn't try and like push to do a ton of stuff. It was just chill.
Cool. I'm glad you had a good time.
Yeah, and I drove.
Yeah, that's just fucking dumb.
So,
I can't process driving to fucking Texas and back.
Well, the upside to that, we haven't had a chance to talk about because I've been gone and someone's been trying to fill my shoes, is I got to see some longtime friends of the podcast when I was in Kansas.
I'm not going to pretend like I don't know about this, but do tell the listeners, because this is pretty cool.
So there's a long tradition. There's a long story of us knowing these authors, but I got to meet up with Caleb Ross, Gordon Highland, and Brandon Teets as I stopped in Kansas for the night. And it came up because because Caleb stopped writing. Gordon isn't really active with writing right now, and Brandon wasn't always as close to us as the others. So anyway, we, as the writing thing calmed down, so did the communication and stuff. We didn't really talk much lately, but I was messaging with Caleb about something, and he's like, "Man, if you're ever down here, we have to go grab drinks." So when I was planning my trip, I was like, "Oh man, Kansas City is almost exactly halfway between, Chicago and Dallas." So I hit up Caleb, and I said, "Hey, can we do this?" And he's like, "Yeah," and he got all excited. So, we went there, and we ended up going to a barbecue place. Naturally, we were in Kansas City.
Yeah, what else do they have there?
They have a speakeasy.
Oh.
We went to a speakeasy.
Wait. If I had to guess, can I guess which one of the three brought up a speakeasy? Is it Brandon?
No.
Really? I'm surprised. That sounds like it might be...
Well, I'm going to describe... I'm going to describe the speakeasy, and then I'll let you re-guess. So the speakeasy is called Swordfish Tom's, I think, and apparently that is a Tom Waits reference, like the musician Tom Waits.
Okay, all right.
And the whole idea of this place is like, you go in there, you have to knock, and they let you in, and it's this really kind of quiet. It's just like mismatched, like chairs and stuff, very cozy, dark. Place where you're not supposed to be too loud, and there's rules like you can't be on your phone, you can't be talking on your phone, you can't take photos, Like, you can look at your phone for like emails or whatever, that kind of thing, but like the whole idea is to like be off the phone, be social, but also be quiet and respectful of the people around you.
I mean, that sounds like it's right up my alley, quite frankly, because that's one of the things I hate about bars is like the noise and the, you know what I mean? Like, it's nice to go sit somewhere where you can actually chit chat without having to talk over other people and stuff. So, you said Tom Waits, which then makes me think it was Caleb's idea.
Yeah, it was Caleb's idea.
Yeah. Up until then, I was like, oh no, well, that's got to be Gordon. But no, it sounds like Caleb's idea. I'm glad you got to hang out with those guys. It has been a long time, and some of the first. I mean, Caleb Ross arguably is the first interview that we did for this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point.
So, and I say arguably because I think we posted a different interview first, but I think he was the first one we actually talked to when we started this podcast 8.5 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, he's the one that turned us on to the Warmed and Bound thing. He's the one that got that ball rolling, and then it's all history from there. So, yeah, it was nice to see them. Me and Brandon came up with a really awful and offensive joke that maybe I'll tell you off the air.
Okay. I think I actually know. I think you sent me this joke.
Does it have to do with suicide?
No, it had to do with vaping.
Oh no, that was separate. Yeah.
Okay. Here's what I will say. Caleb did make a recommendation that we review a video game, and Rob and I have not really had a chance to speak about this, but I purchased that video game, and I think there might be something to it. So maybe early next year, we might review a video game.
Yeah, he was talking to me about it, and I said straight up, the only way this is going to happen is if you get Livius on board. So he took that
I haven't
to heart.
gotten back to him. I literally bought it. I think it was that night or the next night after he messaged me.
Yeah.
The problem is that video game came up at the same time, roughly, as Call of Duty Modern Warfare, which is what's been eating up all my extra non-work, non-reading time. But then I hung back because I was like, well, if we're going to do this later, I have to get you on board. So I don't want to like play through it again. But right. I will say it's interesting. It's not what you think a video game is. I will say that.
Cool. Yeah, he said he was very excited about the storytelling aspect of it. So it'll be interesting to check it out.
Well, and I think he's right. And I've only played through the first, I'd say 3 chapters, if that's the right way to phrase it.
Yeah.
But I think he's right. I think he's onto something. That might be a great story writer that took his craft to video games instead of, novels.
Cool. Well, we'll see where that goes. Maybe that could bring Caleb back onto the podcast. I
like Caleb. Although, fuck Caleb J. Ross.
Yeah, fuck that guy. Anyway.
Old joke for anybody that's been around for a while.
Yeah. We talked about the end of his writing career, which was us giving him a book called FCJR.
Oh, Jesus. I mean,
He said something sweet, though. I don't know if I told you what he said, but we were talking about that, and I was like, dude, if I knew that making a parody book, making fun of you would end your writing career, I probably wouldn't have given it to you. And he said that nothing in his writing career would have made him happier than getting that book. Like, even getting signed on a Big 5 publisher.
That's very, very cool. Maybe we'll retell that story at some point down the line, but Jesus, man, do we have a lot to fucking go through tonight?
Oh yeah, we should probably get back. Yeah,
I was like,
this is the Talk About Rob podcast.
Looking at our notes, here's what we're doing tonight. Since Rob has been away and we missed an episode, and then we had a guest host and stuff, we are not reviewing one book. We are reviewing 2 books. I feel like we've only done this one other time where we've reviewed 2 books at the same time, and it was, my memory's going to fail me here. It was Chris Deal's book and somebody else's.
D.B. Cox.
D.B. Cox. So that was probably 7+ years ago.
Unaccustomed Mercy and Cienfuegos, but there was actually a different time too.
What was the other time?
We reviewed Gordon Highland's book, Flashover. Had another book. I can't remember what other book we talked about. There was 2 books we talked about in that episode.
Gotcha. For only the 3rd time. We're reviewing 2 books. And they are, in this order, Gwendy's Button Box, as written by Richard Chizmar and Stephen King. and Gwendy's Magic Feather, the sequel, which is written by Richard Chizmar.
Yeah, he tweeted about this and actually at mentioned us on Twitter, and that's how this kind of got on my radar. I don't know if you knew about it before that. And I was like, all right, because it was around the release time for Gwendy's Magic Feather, and I was like, yeah, whatever, like I'm up for this kind of thing. And then looking into it, discovered that it was the sequel to Gwendy's Button Box. But then looking into it, it was a novella, and I was like, oh, maybe we could do this. And Olivia said, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure how this wasn't on my radar, and we can get into this a little more during the actual review. But yeah, I'm a little excited.
And it should probably go without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. Because we're reviewing a book and its sequel, some things we say might kind of spoil a little bit of what happened in the first book, and that's just unavoidable. We're going to try and stick to the rule of if it's in the synopsis for Magic Feather and it spoils Button Box, we'll probably go there, but we'll still try and leave the stories as much of a surprise as we can.
That being said, we're going to spend the next 7 or 8 minutes reading a couple of bios. and I think maybe we'll do one synopsis, and then maybe we'll save the other synopsis after we talk about the first book. That probably makes the most sense, right? So I'll kick it off. There's this fella named Stephen King. He is the author of more than 60 books, all of them worldwide bestsellers, which, holy crap, is that impressive. I guess I've never thought about that they're all worldwide bestsellers. His most recent work includes The Institute, Elevation, The Outsider, Sleeping Beauties, and the Bill Hodges trilogy, End of Watch, Finders Keepers, and Mr. Mercedes. His novel 11/22/63 was named a top 10 book of 2011 by the New York Times Book Review and won the Los Angeles Times Book Prize for Mystery Thriller. His epic works, The Dark Tower and It, are the basis for major motion pictures, with It now the highest-grossing horror film of all time. He is the recipient of the 2018 PEN America Literary Service Award and the 2014 National Medal of Arts and the 2003 National Book Foundation Medal for distinguished contribution to American letters. He lives in Bangor, Maine, with his wife, novelist Tabitha King.
Woot.
How does his bio not just say it's Stephen King,
it's
dude?
Stephen fucking King.
That's all it really needs to say. But I don't know.
Wasn't there something? I remember a little dust up about something where someone mentioned Tabitha King as being Stephen King's wife instead of it being a novelist, and they got shit on for it. Like they were kind of being reductive about her.
That sounds vaguely familiar.
Yeah.
But, in whoever's defense, when you're like the let's say probably the best-selling author, maybe of all time, I don't know how they calculate that, but he's got to be up there, right? Like, it doesn't matter who you are, you're going to be Stephen King something if you're related to Stephen King.
I can see why you would say that, yeah.
It would be something like if his son, either one of them, Joe Hill, Owen King, like became president, right, they'd still be like Stephen King's kid, the president of the United States.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that's my thought on it. But let's not dwell on it. We have one more bio to do.
Here we go. Richard Chizmar is the co-author with Stephen King of the New York Times bestselling novella Gwendy's Button Box. Recent books include The Girl on the Porch, The Long Way Home, his fourth short story collection, and Widow's Point, a chilling tale about a haunted lighthouse written with his son, Billy Chizmar, which was recently made into a feature film. I was not aware of that. That's awesome. His short fiction has appeared in dozens of publications, including Ellery Queen's Mystery Magazine and the year's 25 finest crime and mystery stories. He has won 2 World Fantasy Awards, 4 International Horror Guild Awards, and the HWA's Board of Trustees Award. His work has been translated into more than 15 languages throughout the world, and he's appeared at numerous conferences as a writing instructor, guest speaker, panelist, and guest of honor. And then there's some social media stuff, but you have Google, so figure it out.
I'm not criticizing this bio. I'm criticizing this type of wording. Do you think when they say it's been translated into more than 15 languages, they don't want to say 16, or it's like so constantly evolving that it's just safer to say more than 15 because by the time we're reading this, it could be 18 or 20?
Well, the more than is definitely more timeless than saying 16.
Yeah.
So that this bio definitely is probably going to get more mileage out of it. I would say that would be why.
Like when people say like, more than 100, you go, okay, well, you get it because maybe it's 103, 104, but like 15 seems like a weird number to say more than. I don't know.
I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt on that.
All right. Here's the synopsis for Gwendy's button box. I know I'm going to keep enunciating it because it's not Wendy and it's not like Gwenny. It's Gwendy, like Gwen and Wendy, like Gwendy. Gwendy's button box. It is set in the fictional town of Castle Rock, Maine. Rob, are you at all familiar with Castle Rock?
There's a TV show, right?
Yeah. The vast majority of Stephen King books take place in Castle Rock. Or around Castle Rock. I shouldn't say the majority, like they all take place in Castle Rock, but
right.
that is a way of knowing it's a Stephen King book. Stephen King teams up with longtime friend and award-winning author Richard Chizmar for the first time in this original, chilling novella that revisits the mysterious town of Castle Rock. There are 3 ways up to Castle View from the town of Castle Rock: Route 117, Pleasant Road, and the Suicide Stairs. Every day in the summer of 1974, 12-year-old Gwendy Peterson has taken the stairs, which are held by strong, if time-rusted, iron bolts and zigzag up the precarious cliffside. Then one day, when Gwendy gets to the top of Castle View, after catching her breath and hearing the shouts of kids on the playground below, a stranger calls to her. There on a bench in the shade sits a man in black jeans, a black coat, and a white shirt unbuttoned at the top. On his head is a small, neat black hat. The time will come when Gwendy has nightmares about that hat. The little town of Castle Rock, Maine has witnessed some strange events and unusual visitors over the years, but there is one story that has never been told. Until now.
Bum, bum, bum.
Right? So, I literally, the first line of the synopsis is the first line of the book, if memory serves correctly. So, yeah. It's Gwendy Peterson. She is about to go into middle school, and she's a little on the heavier side, and kids have started making fun of her. So she is determined to not, spend the rest of her school career being called Goodyear. And she has pledged herself to losing some weight before school starts. And one of the ways that she does this is by running up these suicide stairs, Rocky Balboa style, every day, to take off some pounds.
Man, kids are fucking horrible.
Yeah, they are.
I don't know how I avoided that as a kid, because I was chubby. No one called me Goodyear. Yeah, so she gets up to the top of the stairs, and it's kind of introspective about like why she's doing it, like Livia's explained. And just as the synopsis said, basically Nick Cave is waiting at the top for her, and he's sitting at a bench, and he does that like. Now this takes place, I guess it bears mentioning. Oh yeah, it says it in the synopsis in 1974. So like, I'm sure stranger danger was a thing. When were you born, Livius?
72.
Okay, so you were 2 when this takes place.
Yes.
But I don't know if it's the same as it is now, where like basically if you don't know a child, like you are forbidden from even like looking at them. But still, like they're like talking to a stranger was a thing that you weren't supposed to do, and he just had this kind of charming, or at least not threatening, non-threatening kind of air about him. So he tries to start talking to her, and even when it gets a little bit weird, like he's non-threatening enough where she keeps talking to him. She sits down on the bench and stuff like that, and but he does say some stuff that's like, "I've been watching you," and it's like the moment "I've been watching you" came out of the dude's mouth, I'd be like, all right, I'd be that SpongeBob meme, the like, I'm a head out.
Yeah, that's fair. But Gwendy is young. It is the early 70s. My parents always told me not to talk to strangers, but then they also thought I should talk to all the neighbors. So around that time, maybe it was a little weird on like how you
right.
how you handle these things. But yeah, he essentially not only tells her that he's been keeping an eye on her, but he offers her a gift / solution to her biggest problem, which is this wanting to not be the center of negative attention from her classmates. And hence we have the title of the book, Gwendy's Button Box. She is provided with a box. And again, I don't want to get into too much of this, but just know that there is a daily reward system that you can use. There's something you can get from this box every day, and that will help her on her path to being a healthy and fit young lady. There are also buttons on the box, and those have some very negative consequences when used.
Yeah, and so he doesn't explicitly tell her when he gives her the box, like, what will happen. He gives her some general ideas about, like, if you try to press one of the buttons, like, you gotta really work it. It's not just gonna go. So he preps her for, like, how to use it, but he doesn't tell her specifically what negative things could happen. But she kind of has some ideas, and he doesn't dissuade her from them. So when she receives this box, she's a general idea that, like, it could be used to do some really bad stuff. But she accepts it like a almost like a guardian of the box. And then that's kind of the launch of the story. After that, it gets into very much, one of my observations about the book is that it's the day-to-day life of this girl. I would say that like there's not as much of an emphasis on there's, you know, some sort of conflict that needs to be resolved in like a typical 3-act structure. It's very much just like a relationship between her and this box and how it affects her life and watching her grow with it. Would you agree with that, Livius?
Yeah, it is. So I don't want to get away from your question, but the structure of this book is not just her day-to-day life. This novella covers a number of years.
Yeah.
So yeah, it kind of checks in with her at different points so that we can see how she's doing. And I think it's safe to say that thanks to the box, by and large, she's doing really, really well.
Yeah. Things start to, not only does she get like in shape and become more athletic and even attractive, but like it seems like things just kind of naturally fall in her favor. And it's not 100% sure whether it's the box that's causing it or if she's just like life is good, but it's hinted but left kind of unclear for the most part.
Over the course of the book, we do not only see the positive benefits, but we do see the results of the button usage on the box. And this is really where I think we have to kind of stay really vague and potentially, you know, kind of cut off the story portion, because this is pretty short. I think it's 176 pages on Amazon is the listing for it. Yeah. So it is pretty short. And like I said, it covers 6 years, I think it is, in a very short period of time. So it's not super in depth, but it does check in at all the right points in Gwendy's life for us to get a good idea what's going on.
Yep. It's not a huge cast of characters either, I'd point out. So she meets the person who has the box. The character's name's Richard Ferris. I mention it now because it's probably going to come up when we talk about the next book. She's got a friend named Olive. There's a boyfriend. There's a creepy kid that, you know, from school. But there's not a lot of, I mean, there's more characters than that, but there's not a lot more. So it's a very Gwendy focused story with like a small cast of supporting characters. And there does end up being kind of a conflict/resolution type situation that happens in the later parts of the book. But like really, there's not much more to say as far as like story goes than that.
All right, for the remainder of this particular discussion, I'll be talking mostly to Stephen King fans because this is a Castle Rock story. And that has some meaning. So Rob mentioned the Castle Rock TV show, which I watched the first season of. I wasn't really enamored with it, but the way that that TV show works, and without getting into real specific, I'm kind of just going off the top of my head. But they'll be like, "Oh yeah, my cousin lived next door to a guy whose dog went crazy, ate up a bunch of people," and then that's clearly a reference to Cujo, right? The Castle Rock story has Sheriff Alan Pangborn, who's appeared in a number of Castle Rock stories, including this one. So there are some characters that make appearances that are from other Stephen King stories, which is really, really cool and I, to preface this, I read a lot of Stephen King when I was a youngster. The last 10 years or so since this podcast started, very little, essentially just what we've reviewed on the podcast for the most part, other than that last book, Wind Through the Keyhole, or whatever it was called, the last Dark Tower book that he did. So I'm sure there are things that I missed there, but Alan Pangborn is not one of them. And there is another character that makes appearance in there, and that's Harry Streeter, who is also from another Stephen King book. So, and I'm sure I missed references throughout, but those two were kind of jumped to mind, as I saw them.
I did catch a Cujo reference in Gwendy's button box.
There you go.
Someone offhandedly said something about a dog going crazy.
Yeah, and I think that's why I said that from the Castle Rock TV show. I think that was just fresh in my head, but it's that type of thing.
Right.
Now, one more thing I would like to address, and because we haven't reviewed, I haven't looked into this yet, and I'm probably going to, but the Richard Ferris character is a little reminiscent of another character, and I'll say that it's probably King's most iconic character. And I'm sure there's some Stephen King fans that would argue with that. But there is a character named Randall Flagg who has appeared in a number of Stephen King books. Originally in The Stand, he's the antagonist in The Stand. He's in Eyes of the Dragon, which still remains one of my favorite Stephen King books, although it's weird. Like, it's not really horror. It's more of like Arthurian fantasy. And he appears throughout the Dark Tower series. So he's kind of timeless. And I happen to notice not only does he dress in black, which is kind of as a matter of fact, throughout the course of the Dark Tower series, he's referred to as the Man in Black. But he has the same initials.
Yeah, Richard Ferris, Randall Flagg.
So I will tell you that although, I knew, obviously right from the top that this is a Castle Rock book, and I knew there was going to be references, and you hear little things, and when it dawned on me probably halfway through that first book, I actually messaged Robb, and I was like, oh, wow, like this is pretty cool. So again, I haven't looked into it, but I will likely do a little bit of digging. I can't be the only person that thought that might be the Man in Black. Now, what I will say, without spoiling anything, is I don't know that this character behaves the same way as Randall Flagg does. So I'll leave it at that. I'll talk to you off the air, but I don't want to give anything away to anyone who hasn't read it. But who knows? Maybe a third book in the series will explain his involvement or his motivations.
Yeah, a lot of so I've read Stephen King books, but a long time ago. So a lot of the references were definitely lost on me. Or any of those references were lost on me. The dog going crazy was so on the nose that who couldn't, catch that?
Yep.
But yeah, that's cool. I've always liked
that damn car had a mind of its own.
Right. And these monsters were eating the past or whatever. I've always liked that kind of universe thing where authors will kind of bring up or reference or include stuff from other books, and King is probably the most famous author that does that kind of thing, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I don't want to get off on this book is a Stephen King book, so I don't spend a lot of time talking about his other books, but what he does in that Dark Tower series is pretty goddamn close to magic from that particular standpoint.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to wrap this up and do the next one? I don't remember what to do in this situation.
I don't know. I guess there are two books, so we probably have to get two reviews. All right. Wonderful to read a book that takes place in Castle Rock. It's really, I'm not sure it changes. It was really, to me, kind of an adorable story in how this plays out with this Gwendy and the button box, and it having take place in Castle Rock, potential Randall Flagg, some other Stephen King characters, all really fun, especially if you're a Stephen King fan. Now, I was thinking really hard about this, It's going to be, because I know this is a trilogy, and I feel, how do I say this? I feel like it's all one big story. So I'm going to give this first one 5 stars because I was fucking enamored with it and it taking place in the Stephen King universe. That being said, when I give my stars for this and for Gwendy's Magic Feather, I am, for the first time I think ever, reserving the right to change my rating based on that third book in the trilogy. Because I really feel like this is one big story and that we're just like kind of reviewing sections of a book more so than a book itself.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Like a reverse 1Q84?
Yes. Kind of like that, which would be a 48Q1.
Yeah, one of those.
Yeah.
So you gave it 5.
I'm giving it 5. I really, really was enamored with that one.
All right, so I'm gonna be reviewing this from the non Stephen King fan perspective. Not saying, just because I haven't read it, I'm not super involved with the universe and understanding the references. I'm an outsider from that perspective. It's just a charming fucking book. Like, it's got a lot of positivity to it, and it was. I'm going to keep it simple. It made me happy. The story was simple and to the point, and it had a kind of a, obviously somewhat of a coming of age kind of feel to it. It was a young girl just kind of figuring out how things work, but with this weird magical thing influencing her life, and all the ups and downs that happen in a normal kid's life are now filtered through the presence of this thing. So super charming book. Love the Gwendy character, and I thought that it was just very well done, and it didn't seem like it had high aspirations. It was just a fun story that they were trying to tell, and they did that very well. It's 4 stars.
All right. Here is the synopsis. We're moving right into the second synopsis of this episode. Something evil has swept into the small western Maine town of Castle Rock on the heels of the latest winter storm. Sheriff Norris Ridgwick and his team are desperately searching for 2 missing girls, but time is running out to bring them home alive. In Washington, D.C., 37-year-old Gwendy Peterson couldn't be more different from the self-conscious teenage girl who once spent a summer running up Castle Rock suicide stairs. That same summer, she was entrusted, or some might say cursed, with the extraordinary button box by Richard Ferris, the mysterious stranger in the black suit. The seductive and powerful box offered Gwendy small gifts in exchange for its care and feeding until Ferris eventually returned, promising Gwendy she'd never see the box again. One day, though, the button box shows up without warning and without Richard Ferris to explain why or what she's supposed to do with it. The mysterious reappearance of the box, along with the troubling disappearances in Castle Rock, leads Gwendy home again, where she just might be able to help rescue the missing girls and stop a madman before he does something ghastly.
So, I know we're going to kind of do the general review thing for this book as well, but off the bat, I want to acknowledge that the synopsis, points out that in the first book, she is relieved of the box at some point. And in this one, it shows back up again, and that makes me think about. It adds an element of her, how she feels about the box being in her life, because she had it in her life for so long, and then it was gone for probably even longer, and now that it's back, she has to react to its existence. And so, things we didn't talk about to not spoil the first book was her interaction with the box. Like, it in her mind, it helped her in her life to like we talked about before, be fit and have, probably some good runs of good luck and stuff, as far as she considered that to be what the box's effect was. But there were also some really bad things that happened in her life that she feels, maybe wouldn't have if the box wasn't around. So when the box shows back up, like, it's not necessarily like, oh, great, the box is back, life is going to be good. It's kind of freaking her out.
Yeah. And she's in definitely a different position. She's not only an adult, but she's a congresswoman now.
Yep.
I mean, so some of that, is there's some question as to how much of that, some self-doubt, and how much of that was her and how much of that is, the aid of the benefits that come with the button box. This one has a very different feel altogether, because right in the background for a good portion of the story, and then moving slowly into the foreground, are these missing girls. So the first book is, more like Rob said, a coming of age tale without like a bigger plot evolving in the background, if that makes sense. This one definitely has a background, and that background is the holidays. There's missing girls. Gwendy's going home to spend time with her family. And as a congresswoman, she's got some sway. The police kind of keep her in the loop with things or whatever. So there's definitely a different feel for this one. That's maybe more traditional narrative than the button box. And it also takes place over the course of a couple of weeks versus a number of years. So they're very different in feel, I would say.
Yeah, agree. But that being said, he still manages to evoke that kind of, this is a narrative of what's happening in Gwendy's life. So I feel like the tone of it's the same, but absolutely in a narrative perspective, like it goes in a different direction. And that got me worried, because when you go from co-authoring something to someone kind of taking the helm, it could end up not feeling consistent. But I feel like he did a good job of, and you could disagree with me, but I think he did a good job of keeping the tone similar, even though like the narrative approach was changed.
Oh yeah, no. I think the voice is the same.
Yeah.
I think that if you read these without knowing, I don't know that you would know that one was called. You know what I mean? I wouldn't think. I mean, I knew from opening them that they were, but I can't imagine if I read these with no covers on them and no names that I would think like, I think something's different. Really, Gwendy's magic feather is like if you zoomed in on a particular part of Gwendy's life from the first book and expanded it out to a full book.
Right.
So in that one, it's a glimpse here, and it's a couple weeks here, and then it's a couple weeks here, and like I said, over the course of 6 years. If you took any of those parts and really expanded it into its own novel, that's essentially what I think Gwendy's magic feather is.
Yep, I agree. In this one, she is an adult. What does it say? She's 37.
Mm-hmm.
It starts the book by like she's at work. She's a congresswoman, and she's like, I never just remember there's a part in an elevator where, like she's reflecting on how people look at her and everything, because she's 37, but she looks way younger, and she's a congresswoman, so she's got like that thing of people thinking negatively about her, maybe out of like jealousy, but also out of like, what's she doing here? She hasn't earned it, kind of thing. So she's still, even though the box has been out of her life for a while, she's still looking good and doing well. And it does, I believe in the beginning of the book, it catches you up what happened between like college and now. So it tells you about like her little stint as an author and stuff, because that was hinted at even in the synopsis of the first book, talking about her writing stories, I think. So yeah, the book at the beginning really catches you up, but it also shows you that even outside of the box, she's still got maybe, like a little rabbit foot tucked in her pocket or something. She's got, luck is on her side.
Indeed. Like I said, she goes home, which means that she's going to have to, encounter some people from her youth, obviously. I mean, she goes home regularly enough, but obviously she's going to revisit with her parents and some other people. And then amongst this, she is involved at some level in this investigation into the missing girls. So she's working with the police on things, and they're keeping her posted. And we get to see the box in action again.
So, I have a question for you, and I want to see like the way like the focus of the book as it goes from the beginning to the middle to the end. In my mind, it felt a lot like it was the beginning of the book was just Gwendy's life. The middle was just like her dealing with the fact with the box was back, and then it was more toward like the second half to the end that the missing girls plot really became something that I cared about. Mm-hmm. Like, so it wasn't that it was just all dumped at the end, but like it didn't seem like the focus until later in the book. Did you feel that way?
Yeah, it builds up slowly.
Yeah.
So it's always there. It's there from, probably, I don't know, the first 25 pages, I would guess. And it's in the background, but it becomes more predominant throughout the course of the book, for sure.
You said that better. Build slowly. I was like, it wasn't important. Yeah, build slowly. That's a good way to say that.
Yeah. We do have an appearance from more cast members and mentions of people from other Castle Rock stories. The big one probably being Norris Ridgwick, who was mentioned. There's mention of Frank Dodd, who was a character in the Dead Zone. So yeah, a little bit more, homage to other Castle Rock players, other Stephen King characters, which again is a super, super nice touch if you're someone doing the air quotes in the know. And then at the back of my mind through this whole one is, is it Randall Flagg? Well, will there actually ever be an answer? Is there? And this one I'll say, and I'm going to say this, I'm going to leave it out there. This one kind of comes with a little bit of a twist, this book. And I'm not going to talk about it on air at all because I think it's a spoiler. Rob and I are going to probably discuss it just on our own after the fact because I want to get his take on it. But yeah, so there's something that there's kind of a twist in this one that wasn't in the first book.
Yeah, so something I want to acknowledge we didn't really talk about in the Button Box conversation, probably because it's a shorter story, is the creepy / scary aspect to the books. I mean, I would hesitate to call Button Box horror, but it does have some scary shit that goes on. And there are some moments in Magic Feather that are pretty chilling. And so as positive and happy as we talk about this book, we're a little bit, I always say we're a little desensitized to the creepy, scary stuff, but like there are some moments in this book and then a couple also in Button Box that are like really chilling. And it is a testament to the fact that these guys know how to write scary stuff in general, but also like especially in Magic Feather, I feel like playing on vulnerability is like one of the ways that the book becomes scary. So weird things happen when she's by herself running or something like that. Someone tries to get into the building that she's living in, things of that nature that I feel like were very, very well done in the first book a little bit, but definitely more so in this one.
Yeah, I agree, and I think part of that is that we goes back to that focusing on one period of time.
Yeah,
that it's easier to kind of do that instead of just dropping snippets here and there.
Right.
So I definitely agree, and the creep factor went up. And overall, the narrative is a little more what you're used to in this one. So it doesn't, it's not as jumpy. So yeah. Yes, for sure. Do you want to wrap this one up? I don't know. There's much more we can say about it.
Yeah, that's the trick. I guess we should acknowledge the fact that this book is called Gwendy's Magic Feather. So in the first book, Button Box, there was an actual button box. In Magic Feather, there does exist a feather. And I'm not going to talk much about it, but like I want to say that the way that the feather was introduced probably almost brought me to tears. It was just like a really like warm and like thoughtful, caring moment. But yeah, there is an actual feather that is part of this story.
Yes, there is. I didn't know how we could talk about the feather, but I think you did a good job.
Yeah,
so
that's all I'm going to say.
I'll let you take this wrap up first.
So I was hot off the. I was hot off reading Button Box when I jumped into Magic Feather, and like I said, I was very charmed by Button Box, so it was easy to settle in. I think I texted Livia, said I had just started the book and I was already 60 pages in. They read very fast, and it's just a comfortable read. I don't think the second one's definitely bigger. It's like 320 pages or something, 330 pages. I probably got through it in a few hours because it's just easy to get through. So it was nice. It was nice getting right back in and picking up where we left off with Gwendy and seeing what she's up to. The Congresswoman thing was a little bit of a surprise for me, but I feel like the expository information at the beginning of the book got me up to speed nicely. All that being said, I think he did a great job of carrying on a very charming narrative and making it more focused and detailed. And giving us a story that, again, like, I feel like because the first book was so focused on Gwendy, that I was more concerned about her day-to-day, what's going on with her, than like this plot of the missing girls. But he really brought it around at the end and did something with it. So overall, I think he did a great job of following up Button Box. And yeah, I'll go 4.5 stars.
Everything that Rob said. One of the things that really struck me about this is Chizmar does a great job of just being like, here's what you missed between the books, and not trying to like slowly weave it in through the course of the story. It's like, here's 5 pages. This is everything you need to know about Gwendy from the last time we saw her when she was 18 and to now, when she's 37 or whatever it is, she's 20 or whatever at the end of the last book. You know what I mean? So he does this great job of just being like, here's the information you need. We're not going to screw around with this. Definitely a more focused story. And what I think this one perhaps loses in charm, it makes up for in narrative. So again, they're very different, stylistically, narrative speaking, although I do think that Richard's voice is matches up very well with however that first one was co-written. There's a little bit in an afterward about how they went about doing it, but I don't think there's a any type of I don't know what the word I'm looking for. There's no distraction in it going from a co-written book to a single author book. But here's the but. This is why I reserved my right to change my star rating. I have some questions after reading the second book. I really enjoyed it, but I can't give this one 5 stars. I'm going to give this one 4 stars. This can only go up. I can only change this review if and when the third part of the trilogy comes out, because I feel like it left a couple of things in a way that I didn't. I don't want to say I didn't like them. I would just like to see some resolution to a couple of points. I'm going to share those with Rob. I'm not going to share it with listeners because I don't want there to be any kind of spoiler or whatever. But I did really enjoy it. So even with that downer, I'm giving it a 4, and I will revisit this 4 when we read, and likely at this point, I would imagine, review the third book in the trilogy, which does not have a date, or at least didn't as of the publication of this book or the printing of this book. So down the line, a year from now, 6 months from now, 2 years from now, I reserve the right to move my 4. It won't move down, but it could move up. So 4 stars.
I'm fingers crossed that the third book is going to be called Gwendy's Copy of the Booked Anthology.
I mean, you never know. You never know. So this was kind of neat. And doing the 2 books together was good. Was good. I mean, I've warmed up to novellas over the years. It was not something I was a fan of when we started this podcast, but they have grown on me. But it was kind of nice to see both these parts of the story for us, like sequentially. I will say too, if you're interested in Gwendy's Button Box, it's on like a special time sale. There's no date because it's Amazon, but you can pick it up for $3 for your Kindle. That's how I read the first one. And then there won't be a Kindle edition available of Gwendy's Magic Feather until January, so you can still pick up a beautiful hard copy to the cover art on this one. I'm sure it looks really cool on the first one as I look at it on Amazon. I know you have 2 paper copies, but I love this. I love this cover. The cover art is really solid.
Now, okay, did you look at the the dust jacket off, like the actual like hard cover, like the cover,
Yes.
like there. So for anybody who's listening, if you take the dust jacket off and you're looking at the actual book, usually it's just like a plain cardboard, like whatever color they chose. This has got like gold leaf, whatever
Embossed.
Yeah,
right?
embossed.
It's
Yeah.
embossed, right? Yeah.
Of like the a Capitol building and a feather and the hat that makes an appearance in the book a lot, and the title Gwendy's Magic Feather and the author's name on the front cover. Usually that's just blank, and then obviously the spine has something, but like they went all out on this, and it looks really great. Like it's probably the first book in a long time hardcover that I've owned that I would like want to take off the dust jacket to look at the covers. So
yeah,
nice attention to detail for Cemetery Dance on that.
Do you not to change the subject, because Cemetery Dance definitely is something that merits some conversation, do you read your books with the dust jackets on?
That's a very good question. I feel like I'm 50-50 on that. It all depends a lot on the dust jacket, but also I think when I'm toward the beginning or end of a book, I don't. But like if it's in the middle, if I'm in like the real meat of it, I can leave the dust jacket on and read fine. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I always don't want to damage the dust jacket, so I always take them off.
That makes sense.
I guess I don't know what other people do. I just feel like if they weren't designed to be taken off, they'd be somehow attached.
Right.
Like even if it was just like a little bit of glue, like a couple dabs of glue, like they wouldn't come off as easy. I don't know. Maybe we should look into the history of dust jackets. That might make for a super exciting episode.
Fascinating conversation.
Where we talk about the history of dust jackets. But you did mention Cemetery Dance. We would be remiss if we didn't mention that not only is Richard Chizmar the author of these two books, but he is, I mean, for all intents and purposes, he is Cemetery Dance. He is the founder of Cemetery Dance. So just in case, you live in a hole and weren't aware of this, Cemetery Dance is a horror magazine that's been around for 30-ish years now, which has articles, and someone was just really excited about getting published in Cemetery Dance. Someone we're socially adjacent to somewhere online, but like Cemetery Dance is a big deal, and this dude not only founded it, but I believe still runs it. And then there's the other side of the coin, which for book collectors is a huge deal, and that's the Cemetery Dance, the book side, Cemetery Dance books. So they published Gwendy's Magic Feather, but they typically publish limited edition. Like here's I'm just throwing stuff out there. Here's like a Robert McCammon leather bound gold, like leafed pages sprinkled with fairy dust, and there's only like 21 copies of it out there, and then exclusive. So Mallerman, right? Didn't Mallerman have one or two exclusives with Cemetery Dance?
Yeah, I think that on the Day of the Pig, which is one of the ones I don't have of Mallerman's, which really pisses me off, it came out of them. But I'm on their website right now, and I'm looking at some of their like authors that they've published, and like this dude puts up some good names. Like obviously there's your buddy F. Paul Wilson is one of them. Peter Straub. Robert McCammon's on there, Stephen King, Dean Koontz, Joe Lansdale, Jack Ketchum, Brian Keene, Christopher Golden. We reviewed a couple of his books. Joe Hill, obviously, Ray Bradbury. I thought that guy was dead.
I mean, he is.
Jillian,
I don't think that,
lot of dudes, but Gillian Flynn's on there. So there you go. He's putting up some serious stuff.
He has published also, or they have published. I guess we should stop treating it like it's the one man show. I don't think it is. Some Richard Lehman stuff too, and I believe, and I could be wrong about this. So again, I believe Richard Lehman's daughter worked for Cemetery Dance for some time.
There you go. It's a big deal.
It's a huge deal, and like I said, I want to give him credit for putting out two great books. But I mean, talk about somebody who's I don't even know what the hell I'm trying to say. Like who's a key contributor to the genre of horror. I mean, Richard Chizmar is definitely there, not just in his writing, but in the work he does to bring it to people. So
here you go. I'm going to order a Cemetery Dance t-shirt right now.
There you go. Are there t-shirts?
Yeah.
Are they nice t-shirts?
Well, I mean, if in case he's listening, of course I'm going to say, yeah, they look great.
Oh, yeah, I got you. Okay. All right. Well, that sounds cool. Yeah, and this is where Rob and I kind of diverge a little bit. Rob's in love with printed books. I'm a little less in love with printed books, which I realize is a terrible thing to say when you host a book review podcast. I love books and I love stories, and I can appreciate books and the love of books, but I don't like reading them. I like reading my digital books. So, but I still recognize and am sometimes very envious of some of the things I see come out from Cemetery Dance. Some of these editions are pretty stunning.
So speaking of print books, can we step away? Is it cool to change the topic?
Sure.
Or I didn't want to, Cemetery Dance started in 1988, by the way. I was just a little Rob.
Yeah, I think I said like 30 years, right? So it'd be like 31 years, right? Math.
Sounds about right.
Yep.
That's a long time. I sent you a picture because I redid my bookshelves in a very dangerous way, and then I changed my mind and redid my bookshelves in a much more safe way. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I put on the podcast, but I mentioned the fact that I'm on a mission to have a print copy of every book that we have reviewed, and I'm over halfway there, which sounds crazy because we've reviewed, you would think that I would have books of all of them, but we've read a lot of stuff digitally. But I sent Livius a picture of these updated bookshelves, and it's starting to get really impressive to see all the books that we've talked about physically sitting on a shelf, because it takes up a ton of space. So it's like a physical manifestation of something that's very like intangible. So it makes me feel good about like, hey, we didn't spend 8 years just talking. Like something came out of it. So it's kind of cool.
It's kind of impressive to see. And like I said, I know that he's only halfway. And that sadly he'll never get there because there are some digital only things that we've reviewed, right? So there's some challenges to what you're doing. I get the feeling that Rob's gonna use that iPhone camera and probably get something on the Instagram or something, a picture of the books we've reviewed shortly. Now that he's got them all in sequential order, it's animal. Yeah. He's got all the books, all the David James Keaton books are broken up.
It's killing me, but it's also kind of cool.
Yeah, Chuck Wendig's entire collection is all spread out throughout the whole thing. So, but it is very cool and very admirable. Like I'm totally like I said, I'm not nearly as enamored with print books, but like I'm out and I see a book, I'm like, we reviewed that, and I like message Rob, do you have this?
Right.
He says no, and I go and I buy it, like because I want him to have all these. So I am living vicariously through you and your book collection.
That's that's nice because you can also visit it when you want to because you live nearby, but like you also don't have to store hundreds of books in your place. So
that's a very good point. I can come visit them and pet the books, and then I can move on with my life. I have books. Fair. I'm sure I've got 100 books here. Maybe I'm turned around and look at the bookshelf. So yeah, there's books. Most of them are signed. That's about all I really keep. It's books that are signed.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. Like, someone was asking me the other day, they're like, you must have a ton of books. And I tell them, like, when I came back to Illinois from Vermont, I got rid of all but maybe 10, 12 books. So, like, everything I have now has just been acquired since the podcast started. And I try to keep it to significant books, either books that we've read, books that have been signed to me, or, first editions of things that I care about. Like, one thing I got excited. When I was on vacation and I was in a bookstore, I found a signed first edition of A Walk Among the Tombstones, the Lawrence Block book. So I was like, man, and I just picked it up because like that's just a cool book to find. So like, and I've been expanding my Elmore Leonard collection. I've got Rum Punch and Get Shorty, and like when I see those out and about, I'll pick those up. But for the most part, it's just like you said, significant books. They have to have a meaning in order to be on the shelf.
Yeah, it's very cool. Yeah, I always like people who like collect things. I just don't have it in me. It's too much work, man.
Yeah, leave it to me.
Whenever Rob's off, every time Robb is off work, even if he's on vacation, I get a picture from somewhere inside of Half Price Books.
It's very
and it's
true.
It's a picture of whatever he found that he's buying. So, how many bookstores did you hit while you were in Texas?
It's funny. We when we were trying to fill time, one of the things we would do is just like Half Price Books is headquartered out of Austin. So like Texas has, I think, more.
They have that big book repository there, don't they?
Oh, come on. Anyway, so like one of the things we do is like, oh, what are we gonna do? Oh, let's go to a bookstore. So we went to a handful of Half Price Books in Dallas. We actually went to a Barnes and Noble as well because I was looking for the U.S. version of the Starless Sea. I ended up finding a better situation for that. But and then we went to Book People in Austin, which, man, I would tell you to go to Austin just to go to this bookstore. It's so cool. I kept messaging Livius from there. And I picked up, I had to get, this is when you know you're in a bookstore that like speaks to you. I had to get a fucking basket to put all the books in because I couldn't carry them. Couldn't just carry them in my hands. I spent, and I'm not even, this isn't a brag, this is just I spent $180 at that bookstore.
Good Lord, man. Wow. I saw the haul though. I mean, it's a good haul. So that's yeah.
And well, I did buy you a gift. So
I know, I appreciate that.
Yeah. So anyway, love it, and now I'm back, and I'm just going to keep going to the same Half Price Books that I go to over and over again.
There you go. All right, a couple other things we want to get out of the way. Happy Thanksgiving. So you're probably listening to this on Thanksgiving or the day before Thanksgiving, or I don't know when this is posting, right? But I'm assuming somewhere in that time frame. So Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours. So hope you have a great holiday. Not really sure what's coming up next week. More than likely an interlude. Maybe we can work something cool out for next week, but no book. We're taking the holiday off. I know it feels like we just took it off, but for anybody who's not, terribly familiar, Robb and I are both in retail. And I know that Robb's week isn't going to be stupid because of what he does. Mine will be. So I'm going to take a week off from reading books for the podcast. Plus, I'll give Robb and I a chance to catch up on some other topics, or who knows, maybe we'll have a guest or something next week. So it's pretty much all I've got, man.
Yeah, that's it. I'm glad to be back. Frank Edler can rest easy. He doesn't have to worry about picking up slack. I'm back. I have to catch up now. Like you're two episodes ahead of me, or like 1.9 or whatever.
Yeah.
I got to catch up. I got to do one without you. I got to figure out a way to make that happen.
You should figure that out next year because I think we're pretty settled in for the rest of the year.
No.
So,
all right, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Join us. I guess Happy Thanksgiving. Join us when you're all full of turkey and stuff for next week. Until then, I am Robb Olson.
And I'm Livius Ned, and keep reading.